Aaliyah Brooks froze mid-step, the tray in her hands trembling as the sound cut through the penthouse kitchen. "Please." The word shattered the silence like glass. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The air shifted when Han Seojin entered a room. Power did that. Fear did that. And tonight, something else, something raw and dangerous, followed him. Just one night. Her pulse slammed against her ribs. Slowly, she set the tray down before her hands betrayed her. When she turned, Seojin stood in the doorway, suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up as if he'd been fighting something far more brutal than men. His dark eyes were burning, not with rage, with desperation. "This isn't appropriate," Aaliyah said quickly, backing until her hips hit the counter. "Sir, you shouldn't. I know what you saw." The words stopped her cold. He stepped closer. One step, then another. Each one tightened the invisible cord pulling at her chest. "In my wife's bedroom," he continued quietly. "You heard what she said to me." Heat rushed to her face. She had seen it, had witnessed the most feared man in Busan's underworld kneeling, begging his own wife for intimacy, for connection, only to be humiliated and rejected like he was nothing. "I shouldn't be here," Aaliyah whispered. "I should go." But she didn't move. Neither did he. "One night," Seojin said again, his voice rough. "Just let me forget who I am. Let me feel something real." This was wrong. Every instinct screamed it. He was her employer, a married man, a criminal. The very reason she'd crossed an ocean with a fake name and a hidden agenda. But when his hand lifted, hovering near her cheek without touching, her body betrayed her long before her mind could catch up. "We can't," she breathed, even as she leaned closer. "I know," he said. His thumb brushed her cheek, light as a confession. Electricity shot through her. "Tell me to stop." She should have. God, she should have. But the way he looked at her, like she was the only solid thing in a world built on lies, made her forget everything else. "I can't," she whispered. And when his lips met hers, months of tension detonated in a single, reckless heartbeat. Aaliyah knew it instantly. She had just made the most dangerous mistake of her life. "Besties, before we continue, let me ask you a question. Have you subscribed to our channel? If not, please do so to help this channel build a strong community. And tell us where you're watching from in the comments section." 3 hours earlier, Han Seojin had stood outside his wife's bedroom, hands clenched at his sides, his empire trembling not from war, but from humiliation. "Get out," Yoon Ara said without turning around. Her voice was ice. "Ara," he pleaded. "Just one night. The families are asking questions. We need an heir." She laughed softly and finally faced him, her smile cruel. "Good. Let them question. Let everything you built rot." "You can't be this heartless," he said hoarsely. "We haven't been together in months." "Not tonight," she replied. "Not ever." From the hallway shadows, Aaliyah had watched it all, breath locked in her chest as the most powerful man she'd ever known fell to his knees. Their eyes met, and in that moment, everything changed. 3 months earlier, Aaliyah Brooks stepped off a plane into Busan with one suitcase, a forged resume, and vengeance burning beneath her ribs. Raymond Brooks, her father, had been murdered 6 months ago in a warehouse in Georgia. The police called it a gang dispute. Aaliyah called it a lie. Encrypted files, offshore transfers, whispered names. Every trail led her here, to one man, Han Seojin, the youngest leader of the Koryo Syndicate, the man who united rival families before turning 30, the man tied to her father's final deal. So she did the one thing he'd never expect. She disappeared. As a foreign domestic worker, eyes downcast, voice quiet, presence forgettable, she walked into his penthouse wearing an apron instead of armor. The apartment crowned the city. White marble, glass walls, cold perfection. Her room was barely larger than a closet, but it had a lock and a view. And that was enough. She expected a monster. Instead, on her first morning, she found Seojin in the kitchen pouring his own coffee, exhaustion carved into his face. "You must be the new staff," he said calmly. "My wife is allergic to shellfish." That was it. No threats, no cruelty, just emptiness. Seo Ara arrived moments later, sharp and beautiful, her gaze slicing through Aliyah like she was nothing. "You don't speak unless spoken to," she said coolly. "You don't look at my husband. You don't exist." Aliyah bowed her head. "Yes, ma'am." The first week was patterns and silence. Seojin left early. Ara slept late. Separate rooms, separate lives. A marriage that looked like art and felt like a corpse. Aliyah worked quietly, photographing documents, cloning drives, memorizing conversations. But 2 weeks in, something cracked. One night, unable to sleep, she found herself in the penthouse library. And when Seojin appeared in the doorway, loosened tie, tired eyes, and asked, "Can't sleep?" everything shifted. "You read classical Korean philosophy?" he asked, surprised. "Before my life fell apart," she answered honestly. He studied her like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to enjoy. "Why do you hide?" he asked. "Same reason you do," she replied softly. "Survival." And for the first time, he smiled. That was when Seo Ara noticed, and that was when everything truly began. After that night in the library, nothing changed on the surface, which made everything more dangerous. Aliyah still wore the apron, still kept her eyes lowered, still moved through the penthouse like a shadow. But now Seojin noticed, when she entered a room. Not openly, not foolishly, just a fraction too long for coincidence. He began taking his coffee in the kitchen instead of his office. "You grind the beans too fine," he said one morning, watching her work. She stiffened. "I'm sorry. I can—" "Don't." His voice softened. "It's better this way." That single sentence followed her all day. Seo Ara noticed too. She noticed the way Seojin's gaze tracked Aliyah when he thought no one was looking, the way his voice changed when he spoke to her, the way the maid no longer shrank the way fear demanded. Predators notice threats instinctively. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the mask finally slipped. Aliyah was changing the sheets in the master bedroom when her hand brushed against something solid beneath the mattress. She froze. Slowly, carefully, she lifted the corner. A phone. Not Seo Ara's usual one. This was cheap, unregistered, disposable. A burner. Aliyah's heartbeat thundered in her ears as training took over. 2 minutes. That was all she needed. She photographed everything, messages, numbers, times, locations. Her blood ran cold. The texts weren't just intimate, they were tactical. His meeting with the Port Authority moved to Friday. Security rotation changed. He suspects nothing. After the merger, we disappear. Interspersed between them were words that made her stomach twist. "I miss your hands." "He's too cold to notice." The contact name was a single letter. Msir Aliyah replaced the phone exactly as she found it, her fingers trembling despite years of discipline. She finished the bed, left the room, locked herself in the supply closet, and breathed through the nausea. Seo Ara wasn't just unfaithful. She was selling her husband's empire piece by piece. That night, dinner was a performance. Important guests, allied families, smiles sharp enough to cut glass. Aaliyah served silently while Seo Ara played the devoted wife, her hand resting possessively on Seojin's arm. He endured it with rigid politeness, his jaw clenched every time she touched him. "You're a lucky man," one elder said. Seojin's smile didn't reach his eyes. Indeed. After the guests left, the penthouse exhaled. Seo Ara disappeared into her room without a word. Aaliyah was collecting glasses when Seojin spoke behind her. "You must think we're pathetic." She turned, startled. "Sir." "Seojin," he corrected quietly. "When it's just us." He looked exhausted, stripped raw. "This marriage," he continued, "it's a farce. It's not my place. I know." He stepped closer. "But you see things." She did. Too much. He was close enough now that she could smell cedar and something darker beneath it. His voice dropped. "In 3 years, no one has looked at me the way you do." Her breath caught. "How do I look at you?" "Like I'm human." His hand lifted again, hovered, never touched. And then his phone rang. The moment shattered. He stepped away, mask sliding back into place, as he answered in rapid Korean. Business. Always business. That night, Aaliyah traced the burner number. It led her straight into hell. Park Tae-sung, Seojin's right-hand man, his childhood friend, the man who knew everything. The betrayal hit harder than she expected. She spent days confirming it, tailing him, watching him meet Seo Ara in a discreet hotel outside the city, recording whispers through cracked doors, photographing hands entwined and mouths pressed together. They planned carefully. Wait until Seojin finalized the merger with the Japanese syndicate. Leak the intel, trigger chaos, disappear rich. If Seojin died in the fallout, that was simply efficient. Aaliyah sat in her car outside the hotel long after they left, staring at the evidence on her phone, chest aching in a way that had nothing to do with revenge. She had a choice. Stay invisible. Let it burn. Follow the mission. Or warn him. There was no path where she got both justice and safety. That night, Seojin was in his office, working late as always. Aaliyah stood outside the door for 10 minutes, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to walk away. He was still a criminal, still dangerous, still possibly connected to her father's death. But she knocked. "Come in." He looked up, surprised. "It's late. You should be resting." "I need to tell you something," she said, voice steady despite the chaos inside her. "About your wife." His expression hardened. "I don't discuss my marriage with staff. She's having an affair with Tae-sung." Silence slammed down like a weapon. "That's a serious accusation," Seojin said softly. "I have proof." She showed him everything. He didn't interrupt, didn't shout, didn't break anything. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. "Why tell me now?" "Because I care about you." She swallowed it down. "Because it's the right thing to do." He turned to the window, shoulders rigid. "My marriage was an alliance. I never expected love, but I expected loyalty." He laughed once, bitter. "And Tae-sung, he's been my brother." "I'm sorry," she whispered. He turned back to her, eyes sharp. "Who are you really?" Her heart stopped. "You're not just a maid," he continued. "You speak 5 languages. You know surveillance. You move like someone trained." The lies she'd practiced crumbled. "I'm looking for answers about my father's murder," she said quietly. "The trail led to you." She braced for anger. Instead, he smiled sadly. "And did you find them?" "I found that you weren't what I expected," she said, "and that you weren't there when he died." He studied her. Are you leaving now? She should have. I don't know, she admitted. Stay, he said, voice bare. Please. And against every rule she'd ever lived by. She did. The week that followed existed in a strange, suffocating limbo. Seojin said nothing to his wife, nothing to Tae-sung. He went to meetings, signed documents, made calls, played the unshakable syndicate leader so convincingly that even Aliyah wondered if she had imagined the crack in his armor. But when they were alone, the silence spoke louder than words. Late nights in the library became routine. Not touching, not crossing lines. Just two people circling something dangerous they refused to name. You grew up in this life, Aliyah said one night, seated across from him, legs tucked beneath her. Did you ever want out? He didn't answer right away. I wanted to choose, he said finally. I never got to. She nodded. Neither did I. Their eyes held. Something fragile passed between them. Seo Ara watched everything. The birthday party was her idea. Appearances matter, she said coolly, days before. All 5 families will attend. We need unity. Seojin agreed without hesitation. Aliyah felt dread settle deep in her bones. The penthouse transformed into something unreal. Crystal chandeliers, imported flowers, champagne chilled to perfection. Guests in tailored suits and silk gowns filled the space with laughter that sounded rehearsed. Aliyah moved through it all, invisible again. Seo Ara clung to Seojin's arm, radiant and cruel, playing the devoted wife flawlessly. Tae-sung hovered nearby, smiling like a loyal shadow. Aliyah watched them both, heart pounding. Then she saw it. In the kitchen, Seo Ara slipped something from her clutch. A small vial. Clear liquid. Not poison. Sedative. Strong. Fast-acting. Enough to make Seojin helpless. Enough to make an accident believable. Aliyah didn't think. She moved. As Seo Ara approached Seojin with a glass of whiskey, Aliyah crossed the room, deliberately off balance. The tray tipped. Champagne splashed. Glass shattered across white marble. The room froze. I'm so sorry, Aliyah gasped, dropping to her knees. I didn't mean... Seo Ara's hand struck her face. The sound cracked like a gunshot. Aliyah's head snapped to the side, pain blooming hot and sharp. Silence swallowed the room. Seojin's hand closed around his wife's wrist. Touch her again, he said softly, dangerously, and I will destroy your entire family. Shock rippled through the guests. Get out, Seojin said. All of you. The party ended in stunned whispers. When the last guest left, Seojin helped Aliyah to her feet, his touch careful, reverent. Are you hurt? She shook her head. He turned to Seo Ara, the warmth gone from his eyes. I know about Tae-sung. Her smile faltered. He showed her the evidence. Shock, fear, calculation. So you want a divorce? She snapped. Fine, I'll take half. You'll take what I give you, Seojin said. And be grateful I don't bury you for treason. Her gaze slid to Aliyah, hatred curdling. This is about her. Finish that sentence, Seojin warned quietly. Pride won over survival. She'll be dead by morning, Seo Ara said. My family doesn't forgive humiliation. The threat hung heavy. And then Seojin broke. Please. The word stunned everyone. He dropped to his knees. One night, he begged. Let me get her somewhere safe. Then take everything. Aliyah's heart shattered watching him kneel. Seo Ara smiled. You have until sunrise. She left. Silence followed. Aliyah stepped forward. You shouldn't have done that. You need to leave, Seojin said urgently. I'll get you out. She turned to the hallway where Seo Ara had disappeared. You really should have done your research. Seo Ara paused. Aaliyah's voice was steady. My name is Aaliyah Brooks. My father was Raymond Brooks. Recognition flashed. I came to Busan looking for his killer. Aaliyah continued. Your family brokered the deal that got him murdered. She revealed everything. Files, transfers, recordings. I sent copies to the family heads and federal agencies, Aaliyah said calmly. By morning, everyone will know. Seo Ara crumpled. Sign the papers, Aaliyah finished. Testify. Disappear. Or I end you. She signed. She fled. The door slammed. Seojin stared at Aaliyah like he was seeing her for the first time. You lied to me. Yes, she said, but not about understanding loneliness. He cupped her face gently. This is impossible. Everything about us is. Stay, he said, not as a maid, as you. She nodded. Partners, equals. And outside, the city waited. The silence after Seo Ara fled felt heavier than any gunfire Aaliyah had ever heard. Shattered glass glittered across the marble floor. The penthouse, once immaculate, looked like a crime scene stripped bare of its illusions. Aaliyah stood in the center of it, pulse racing, every sense sharpened, waiting for the moment Seojin would finally pull away. He didn't. Instead, he straightened slowly, eyes never leaving her face, like he was afraid she might vanish if he blinked. You didn't just expose my wife, he said quietly. You declared war. I know. You turned my allies into witnesses. I know. And you stayed. She met his gaze without flinching. You begged on your knees to save me. I couldn't walk away after that. Something broke in his expression. Not anger. Something closer to relief, edged with fear. You should be terrified of me, he said. Of this world. I grew up in it, Aaliyah replied, just on the other side of the ocean. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Seojin exhaled, long and slow. We have less than 6 hours before sunrise. I've already moved my backups, Aaliyah said. If anything happens to me, the evidence goes public automatically. He nodded once. Smart. You taught me, she said. You just didn't know it. They didn't sleep. They planned. Maps spread across the dining table. Names circled in red. Lines drawn between families, ports, shell companies. Aaliyah laid out everything she'd gathered over 3 months. Seojin added what she couldn't access. Old loyalties, quiet grudges, the fractures beneath Busan's underworld. Taesung won't disappear quietly, Seojin said. He'll move fast. He already has, Aaliyah replied, showing him a notification. He just pulled funds from 3 accounts. Seojin's jaw tightened. He's buying protection. Too late, Aaliyah said. Everyone knows now. At dawn, the city exploded. Phones rang non-stop. Messages flooded in. Family heads demanded answers. Law enforcement inquiries multiplied. The Koryo syndicate fractured overnight, not by force, but by exposure. Seo Ara vanished before noon. Witness protection. Her family disowned her within hours. By evening, Taesung was found alone in a hotel room, his accounts frozen, his allies silent. Seojin didn't have to touch him. The world they built together had already decided his fate. Throughout it all, Aaliyah stayed at Seojin's side, not hidden, not silent, seen. At the emergency council meeting that night, the tension was electric. 5 families, 1 table, no smiles. You brought an outsider into our home, one elder spat. A woman who nearly collapsed the syndicate. Seojin's hand rested on the back of Aaliyah's chair. She saved my life, he said calmly, and exposed a traitor among us. She's a liability. She's an asset, Seojin corrected. And she's under my protection. Aaliyah felt every eye on her, judging, measuring, calculating how much blood she was worth. You're asking us to accept her, another said slowly. A foreigner, a woman, at your side. Seojin leaned forward. I'm not asking. Silence. Afterward, when they were alone again, the weight finally caught up to her. This doesn't scare you? Aaliyah asked softly. Losing allies, standing alone. I've always been alone, he replied. I just didn't know it until now. That night, the penthouse felt different. Not safer, just honest. Aaliyah stood by the window, watching the city pulse with secrets, when Seojin joined her. You could still leave, he said. Disappear, start over. She smiled faintly. And let them rewrite the story? You don't owe me anything. She turned to face him. You knelt for me. You broke every rule of your world. He searched her face. And you dismantled an empire for me. For truth, she corrected. For my father. And for me, he said quietly. She didn't deny it. When he kissed her this time, it wasn't desperate. It was steady, certain. Two people choosing each other with open eyes. Outside, threats gathered. Inside, something fragile took root. By morning, warrants were issued, assets seized. Rival families scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. The world Aaliyah stepped into months ago no longer existed, and the one she was building with Seojin would never be safe. But it was real. The retaliation didn't come with gunfire. It came with whispers. By the second day, Busan's elite circles were buzzing. Not about the collapse of a powerful family, not about frozen assets or indictments, but about her, the maid, the foreign woman standing beside Han Seojin. Aaliyah felt it the moment they stepped into public together for the first time. The underground garage echoed with murmurs that stopped abruptly when Seojin's men appeared. Eyes followed her, measured her, dismissed her, feared her. You're a distraction, one council member said openly during a closed-door meeting. They'll use you. They already are, Seojin replied evenly. And she's still standing. Aaliyah said nothing. She didn't need to. Silence unnerved them more than words ever could. That afternoon, the first warning arrived. A black envelope slid under the penthouse door. No return address, no message inside, just a photograph. Her father, alive, standing beside men she hadn't seen in years. Her breath caught. They're trying to shake you, Seojin said after one glance. Old ghosts. They don't know me, Aaliyah replied. They know the girl I used to be. She remembered her father's voice, calm, strategic, teaching her how to read rooms, not people, how to see leverage where others saw chaos. They think this will make me run, she said quietly. It won't. That night, a car followed them. Not close enough to attack, just close enough to be seen. Seojin's security reacted instantly, rerouting, shielding, surrounding. Aaliyah watched the city blur past the tinted windows, pulse steady despite the danger. You're too calm, he said. I've lived with worse, she replied. Fear wastes energy. He studied her. You're not pretending anymore. No, she said. Neither are you. The next strike was louder. An emergency press conference, anonymous leaks, headlines screaming scandal. Foreign woman linked to criminal empire Maid or mastermind. Power couple or power play. They tried to frame her as a manipulator, a spy, a seductress who destabilized a dynasty. Seojin watched the coverage in silence, jaw tight. Say the word, he said finally. I'll shut them down. No, Aaliyah said. Let them talk. He turned to her sharply. This puts a target on you. It already exists, she replied. But if we silence them, we confirm their fear. She stepped closer, voice firm. My father taught me something important. When they don't know what you'll do next, you win. That evening, she did something no one expected. She went public. Not with rage, not with threats, with truth. Standing beside Seojin, she addressed the cameras calmly, her words measured and deliberate. My name is Aliyah Brooks, she said. I was invited into this home as staff. I stayed because I uncovered a crime that nearly cost lives, including my own. She didn't beg for acceptance. She didn't apologize. I didn't seduce anyone, she continued. I didn't manipulate power. I exposed corruption. If that makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself why. The room went silent. Seojin didn't interrupt, didn't overshadow her. He stood slightly behind her, a deliberate choice that sent its own message. Partners. That night, the threats escalated. An attempt on one of Seojin's warehouses, a warning shot, no casualties, just smoke and intent. They're testing us, Aliyah said, scanning reports, seeing how far we'll go. Seojin met her gaze. How far will you go? She didn't hesitate. All the way. They struck back strategically, not violently, legally, financially, exposing shell companies, cutting supply lines, turning quiet allies into witnesses. The old world crumbled faster than anyone anticipated, but victory came with a price. One evening, as the penthouse finally grew quiet, Aliyah stood alone in the library, staring at the city lights. For the first time since arriving, exhaustion crept in. Seojin joined her. You're carrying too much, he said. So are you. He hesitated. When this is over, you don't have to stay. She turned. Is that what you want? No, he admitted. But wanting you makes me dangerous to you. She stepped closer. I didn't survive my father's world by being fragile. I know, he said softly. That's what scares me. She smiled faintly. Then trust me. The next morning, the final move arrived. An arrest warrant, not for Seojin, for the men who ordered her father's death. The evidence Aliyah had planted months earlier finally surfaced, airtight and undeniable. International cooperation moved swiftly, assets seized, names exposed. Raymond Brooks's killers were no longer ghosts. Aliyah watched the news alone. Seojin found her sitting on the floor, back against the couch, tears streaking silently down her face. He knelt in front of her, didn't speak. She broke. I spent my whole life thinking justice would feel louder, she whispered. He's still gone. He pulled her into his arms without a word. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, grief finally found space to breathe. The city didn't stop moving just because justice finally caught up. Busan woke the next morning loud and indifferent. Traffic humming, headlines updating, people living their lives unaware of how close everything had come to burning down completely. The world had shifted, but only for those standing at the center of it. Aliyah stood on the balcony of the penthouse, wrapped in a robe that wasn't hers, watching the skyline dissolve into early light. For the first time since her father died, there was no next move demanding her attention, no enemy left to expose, no evidence left to send, just quiet. Seojin stepped out behind her, careful not to startle her, as if she were something fragile instead of the most dangerous woman he knew. It's done, he said quietly. She nodded. They're in custody. They'll never touch you again. She turned to look at him. You can't promise that. No, he admitted, but I can promise they'll regret trying. She studied his face, the man who had knelt, who had begged, who had chosen her openly in a world that punished weakness. The man who had once terrified an entire city and now stood bare in front of her without armor. "What happens now?" she asked. He exhaled slowly. "Now the syndicate restructures, quietly, ruthlessly, without the rot." "And me?" "That depends on what you want." She leaned back against the railing, eyes returning to the city. "If I stay, I'll never be invisible again." "You never were," he said. "If I leave," she continued, "they'll call it proof. Say you were manipulated. Say you lost control." He stepped closer. "I don't care what they say." She looked up at him. "I do. Not because I'm afraid, but because I won't let them rewrite what we did." Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy with truth. "I won't be your weakness," Aaliyah said finally. "And I won't be your shield." Seojin met her gaze. "Then be my equal." That word again. Equal. It had followed them from the beginning, threading itself through every impossible choice they'd made. She nodded once. "Then we do this openly. On our terms." That afternoon, the penthouse filled with people again. But this time, there were no performances. The family heads arrived tense, guarded, wary. They expected apologies, concessions, a power play softened by scandal. They got none. Seojin stood at the head of the room, composed, unflinching. Aaliyah stood beside him, not behind. "This syndicate survives because we adapt," Seojin said calmly, "because we cut out betrayal before it infects the whole body." Murmurs rippled. "And because we don't mistake tradition for strength," Aaliyah added, her voice steady, cutting cleanly through the noise. Some bristled. Others listened. "She exposed a conspiracy that nearly destroyed us," Seojin continued. "Anyone who questions her place here questions my judgment." Silence. Then one elder spoke. "And if someone challenges that?" Seojin didn't answer. Aaliyah did. "Then they answer to me." The meeting ended without bloodshed, without shouting, without threats. It was more terrifying than violence ever could be. That night, when the penthouse finally emptied again, exhaustion crashed down hard. Aaliyah sank onto the couch, rubbing her temples. "You didn't have to do that," she said, softly. "Stake your authority on me." "I wanted to," Seojin replied. "For once." She studied him. "You know this makes me a permanent target." He nodded. "And it makes you untouchable." She laughed quietly. "That's not how this world works." "No," he agreed. "But we're changing it." Later, alone in the library, the place where everything had truly begun, Aaliyah traced her fingers along the spines of the books she once pretended to read. The girl who arrived here with a fake name and a hidden knife felt impossibly distant. Seojin joined her, handing her a glass of water. "Regrets?" he asked. She shook her head. "Just one." He waited. "I wish my father could see this," she said. "Not the power, the truth." "He'd be proud of you," Seojin said without hesitation. "And terrified." She smiled through the ache. "That sounds right." He reached for her hand, tentative despite everything they'd survived. "This won't be easy," he said. "They'll test us. Push. Look for cracks." She intertwined her fingers with his. "Good. Let them." He studied her, something almost boyish flickering through the hardened edges of his expression. "You know this means we're not a normal story." "Normal stories are boring," she replied. He laughed softly, then grew serious. "I won't cage you." "And I won't save you," she said. "We stand side by side or not at all." He leaned his forehead against hers. "Partners. Equals." Outside, the city hummed. Dangerous, alive, unforgiving. Their enemies hadn't vanished. Their world hadn't softened. The cost of loving each other would always be high, but for the first time, neither of them felt alone. And that made all the difference. If this story kept you glued until the very end, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and drop a comment telling us, would you risk everything for a love this dangerous? Let us know, because more intense stories are coming, and you won't want to miss it.